If you need the starting code for this lesson, you can, and we'll open our downloads folder. For me, it's here, and we're going to unzip this file. On Windows, we're going to right click and click extract all and extract. And on Mac, you can just double click the zip file. And then we're going to open this folder, and we're going to move all of these files and folders into VS Code. First, let's go into VS Code, and we're going to organize all of those files into a new folder. So we'll click the e-commerce project and create a new folder, and we'll name this starting-code. And we'll open our downloads folder again, and we're going to move all of these files into this new folder. So we'll select it, and we're just going to drag it into starting code. And let's save these changes into Git. So then Git will start tracking any new changes that we make. We'll open the Git section, and here we added all of the starting code. And at the top, let's type the message, add the starting HTML and CSS code, and commit. Let's go back to our files, and we're going to go to the starting code and look for index.html. And we're going to right click this file, and we're going to open with Live Server. And you'll see we have all the HTML and CSS for this project. So now we're going to create this using React. We'll start by creating let's go back to and we're going to organize all of those files into a new folder. So we'll click the e-commerce project and create a new folder, and we'll name this starting-code. And we'll open our downloads folder again, and we're going to move all of these files into this new folder. So we'll select it, and we're just going to drag it into starting. So we'll click the e-commerce project and create a new folder. Everything installed, we can run this project using the command npm run dev. And now we can open this project using this URL in the browser. So we'll select this URL and copy. You can check the troubleshooting guide in the description. First, let's take a look at the project we're going to build. In our browser, we're going to create a new tab. And at the top, we're going to go to supersimple.dev/projects/e-commerce. And we can close these other tabs. This is an e-commerce project or an online shopping project. We can add products to our cart, and then we can click here to view our cart. And this page will display all the products in our cart. It will calculate the total for our order, and it will also calculate a delivery date. And then we can create an order. And this page will list all of the orders that we created. We can also click this button to track the order. So depending on the delivery date, it will show you the progress of the delivery. And we'll click here to go back to the orders page. So notice that this project has multiple pages. So it's much bigger than the chatbot project. And we're working with more data than before. So we have products, we have a cart, and we have orders. By the way, if you ever need to reset the cart or the orders, you can click this reset button here in the bottom right. And it will reset everything back to the default data. So let's click the top left to go back to the main page. And now that we introduced the project, we're going to build this with React. We'll go back to VS Code and we'll collapse the chatbot project folder. And before we create a new React project, let's group these older files into a folder. We'll click this HTML file and we'll create a folder. And let's name it React-Basics. And we're going to move all these files into this folder. Now, a shortcut here is to click this file and then press Shift on your keyboard and click the bottom file. And it will select all the files between those two. And we can drag this into the folder. And we'll collapse it. So that just helps us stay a little more organized. Next, we're going to set up a new React project using Vite. To do that, we're going to go to our terminal. If you have the Vite server running, you can close it by pressing Ctrl-C on Windows or Ctrl-C on Mac. So if you're continuing from the previous lesson, the terminal should be running inside the chatbot project folder. To confirm that, we can run print working directory or pwd, and it will tell us that we're inside the chatbot project folder. Now, to set up a new React project, we want to be inside the React-course folder. So to get out of the chatbot project folder, we can run the command cd ... And if we press pwd, we should be inside the React-course folder. Another way to do this is to just start a new terminal. Now we'll use Vite again to set up a new React project. In the command line, we'll run the command npx create-vite, and we'll type @ and give it a version. So you can find the version in the description by clicking this link and going to lesson 6, and you'll find the version of Vite that we're going to use, as well as the full command. By the way, the version that you see in this video might be different than the version you see on your page. You should always use the version that you see on your page. I did this because it's hard to update the video. So this lets me easily update the version in the future. So select the version on your page, copy. So I'm going to paste the version here and press enter. For the project name, let's name it e-commerce-project. Press enter. And from this list, we'll press the down arrow and select React. And from this list, we'll press down and select JavaScript. And it will set up a new React project inside our React-course folder which we see right here. And now we need to go into this folder using the command cd ecommerce-project. And we're going to run npm install to install all of the packages inside package.json. So we'll run npm install. Once we have everything installed, we can run this project using the command npm run dev. And now we can open this project using this URL in the browser. So we'll select this URL and copy. And in the browser, we're going to create a new tab. And then here, we'll paste. And now we have a new React project. Before we start updating the code, we're actually going to review a tool called Git. Git helps us track changes in our code, and it's useful in bigger projects because we're going to be making lots of changes, and it's easy to forget what we changed. So Git will help us track our changes. We're going to go to our code, and we're going to open the Git section here. If you already have Git installed, it should say initialize repository. If you do not have Git installed, you can click this link in the description, go to lesson 6, and follow these instructions to install Git. Once you have Git installed, we'll click initialize repository. Now, a repository is just a folder where Git is tracking changes. At first, Git will tell us that all of these files, or everything inside our React-course folder, is new. And that's because a repository starts out as empty. So Git considers all of these files as new files. We'll go back to the Git section, and we'll scroll up, and we're going to save all of these files into Git. At the top, we'll type a message to describe our changes. So let's type the message, add the starting files, and press commit. Commit means we're going to save these changes into Git. Now, you might run into an error when using Git, and it tells you have to configure your username and email. To do that, you can run these two commands in the command line and choose your username and choose the email you want to use. And try to commit again. And now it should work. If it asks to confirm, you can press yes. And now Git will start tracking any new changes that we make. For example, if we go into our code and open the e-commerce project and change some of these files, we type test and save, and in the source app.jsx, we type test and save, and then we can go to the Git section, and now Git will tell us everything that we changed in these two files. So as you can see, Git helps us track changes in our code. Also, Git lets us undo our changes. So to undo this change, we can click this arrow button here. And to undo all of our changes, at the top, we can click this arrow button here. So that's a review of how Git works. It can track our changes, and it lets us easily undo our changes. Let's go back to our files. And remember that in our React setup, we have a file called .gitignore. So now we can learn what this file does. .gitignore tells Git which files and folders to ignore, or not to track changes. For example, in this file, we can see the folder node modules. So this tells Git that if there are any changes inside node modules, it will not be tracked. The reason we ignore node modules is because this folder is very large, and none of the changes inside this folder are changes that we make. Instead, we generate this folder using a package.json and npm install. So because this folder is generated, it doesn't make a lot of sense to save this in Git. So that's a review of Git. Git helps us track changes in our code, and .gitignore tells Git which files and folders to ignore or to not track changes. Now we're ready to start the project. First, we're actually going to download the HTML and CSS for this project. We'll click this link in the description and then click here, and we'll open our downloads folder. For me, it's here, and we're going to unzip this file. On Windows, we're going to right click and click Extract All and extract. And on Mac, you can just double click the zip file. And then we're going to open this folder, and we're going to move all of these files and folders into VS Code. First, let's go into VS Code, and we're going to organize all of those files into and spending our time writing this link in the description. Git helps us track changes in our code, and .gitignore tells Git which files and folders to ignore or to not track changes. Now we're ready to start the project. First, we're actually going to download the HTML and CSS for this project. We'll click this link in the description and then click here, and this will open GitHub. And this contains all the HTML and CSS for the e-commerce project. The reason we're going to use some starting code is because this course is focused on React. By using this code, we can focus on learning React features rather than spending our time writing HTML and CSS. If you want to practice HTML and CSS, you can try to recreate the design on your own after this course. Another reason we're using some starting code is in the real world, we often work on an existing project rather than a new project. So this will give us some practice working on an existing project. So to download the starting code, we're going to click this code button here, and we'll click Download Zip. And we'll open our downloads folder. For me, it's here, and we're going to unzip this file. On Windows, we're going to right click and click Extract All and extract. And on Mac, you can just double click the zip file. And then we're going to open this folder, and we're going to move all of these files and folders into VS Code. First, let's go into VS Code, and we're going to organize all of those files into a new folder. So we'll click the e-commerce project and create a new folder, and we'll name this starting-code. And we'll open our downloads folder again, and we're going to move all of these files into this new folder. So we'll select it, and we're just going to drag it into starting code. And let's save these changes into Git. So then Git will start tracking any new changes that we make. We'll open the Git section, and here we added all of the starting code. And at the top, let's type the message, add the starting HTML and CSS code, and commit. Let's go back to our files, and we're going to go to the starting code and look for index.html. And we're going to right-click this file, and we're going to open with Live Server. And you'll see we have all the HTML and CSS for this project. So now we're going to create this using React. We'll start by creating this main page. We usually call this the home. Let's go back to our files, and we're going to go to the starting code and look for index.html. And we're going to right-click this file, and we're going to open with Live Server. And you'll see we have all the HTML and CSS for this project. So now we're going to create this using React. We'll start by creating this main page. We usually call this the home page. By the way, a page or a web page is a single page, like the home page or the cart page. A website is a group of web pages. To create this home page, we're going to move all of the HTML and CSS into React. We'll go back to VS Code, and we'll open the starting code index.html. And this file contains the HTML for the home page. And we're going to move this HTML into the index.html here for the e-commerce project. So let's actually drag this index.html, and we'll open it at the bottom so we can see these files side by side. And we'll move the HTML in the starting code into our project one by one. We already have the doc type HTML inside here, so we don't need to move it. And we also have the HTML and head elements. The first thing that we do need to move is this title. So we'll select this title and then cut. And inside the project's HTML file, let's replace the title here. And now we'll keep going one by one. Next, this meta viewport element makes the website look good on smaller screens. Now, we already have this inside our React setup, so we do not need to move it over. Let's actually select this code and delete it so that we can keep track of our progress. Next, this code loads a font or a style of text called Roboto. We're going to use this font in the e-commerce project, so we're going to move it over. Let's select this code and cut. And inside our e-commerce project, we're going to paste. And if you need to, you can fix this spacing by selecting these lines and press Shift-Tab a few times. Next, these lines of code load the CSS for our project. Now remember, when using Vite, we actually import our CSS files. So we're not going to move these over for now, but we'll keep these for later. Finally, if we scroll down, the HTML inside the body creates the contents of the page. Now the contents of the page should be created by React. So let's move this into a React component. First, we'll create a component for the home page. So we'll scroll up to the source folder, and we'll click this folder, and we'll create a new file. Usually, we create a component for each page of the website. So let's name this file capital H home, capital P page.jsx. Now, this website has multiple pages. So let's create a folder to group all the pages together. We'll create a folder and we'll name it Pages. And we're going to move the home page into the Pages folder. And now let's create a component for the home page using function, and we'll name it capital H home, capital P page, brackets and curly brackets. And we're going to return brackets. We're going to return the HTML for the home page. which is right here. So we're going to copy all of this HTML into our new component. So one trick we can do is on the left, we're going to click this arrow to collapse this element, and we're going to click this arrow to collapse this element as well. And now we can select all of this HTML code and cut, and inside homepage.jsx, we're going to paste that code. And now we're going to scroll up and fix all of these errors. First, if we collapse this code and collapse this element, you can see we're returning 2 elements from this component. But remember, we can only return 1 element from a component. To fix this, we can wrap this in a fragment. So at the top, we'll create a fragment using less than, greater than, and delete this closing tag. And at the bottom, we'll create the closing tag less than / greater than. And let's also fix the indenting here. We can select all of this code and press tab a few times until there's an indent before the fragment. And for the first line, we're going to remove an indent. And that will fix the indenting. Next, we'll fix these errors. We'll expand these elements. And remember, in React, we have to use class name instead of class. So to fix these errors, we need to change all of these to use class name. To do that, we can press Ctrl F on Windows or Command F on Mac to find some code. And we're going to search for the code class equals. And then we're going to click this arrow on the left, and this will open the replace menu. So this lets us replace class equals with something else. We'll replace it with class capital N name equals, and then press this button to replace tag less than element from a component. Click this arrow to collapse this element as well. And now we can select all of this HTML code and cut, and inside homepage.jsx, we're going to paste that code. And now we're going to scroll up and fix all of these errors. First, if we collapse this code and collapse this element, you can see we're returning 2 elements from this component. But remember, we can only return 1 element from a component. To fix this, we can wrap this in a fragment. So at the top, we'll create a fragment using less than, greater than, and delete this closing tag. And at the bottom, we'll create the closing tag less than / greater than. And let's also fix the indenting here. We can select all of this code and press tab a few times until there's an indent before the fragment. And for the first line, we're going to remove an indent. And that will fix the indenting. Next, we'll fix these errors. We'll expand these elements. And remember, in React, we have to use class name instead of class. So to fix these errors, we need to change all of these to use class name. To do that, we can press Ctrl F on Windows or Command F on Mac to find some code. And we're going to search. search for the code class equals. And then we're going to click this arrow on the left, and this will create the closing tag less than / greater than. And let's also fix the indenting here. We can select all of this code and press tab a few times until there's an indent before the fragment. And for the first line, we're going to remove an indent, and that will fix the indenting. Next, we'll fix these errors. We'll expand these elements. And remember, in React, we have to use class name instead of class. So to fix these errors, we need to change all of these to use class name. To do that, we can press Ctrl F on Windows or Command F on Mac to find some code. And we're going to search for the code class equals. And then we're going to click this arrow on the left, and this will open the replace menu. So this lets us replace class equals with something else. We'll replace it with class capital N name equals, and then press this button to replace all. And now you'll see that we fixed all of the ESLint errors. Finally, we're going to scroll to the top, and we need to export this component so we can use it in other files. At the front, we'll type export and save. So we moved all the HTML from the home page into our component, and we fixed all these errors. Now let's use this component in our app. We're going to go to app.jsx, and we'll remove this default HTML. So we'll select it and delete it. And we'll scroll to the top, and we need to export this component so we can use it in other files. At the front, we'll type export and save. So we moved all the HTML from the home page into our component, and we fixed all these errors. Now let's use this component in our app. We're going to go to app.jsx, and we'll remove this default HTML. So we'll select it and delete it, and we'll insert our home page component. First, we need to import it. At the top, we'll import curly brackets the home page from a string, and we'll locate this file. So we're going to type / to start in the current folder, which is the source folder, and we'll go into pages / home page. And now we'll insert the home page into our app. So here we'll type less than home page / greater than. And next, we'll fix these ESLint errors. The React logo and Vite logo are not used anymore, so we can remove them. Count and set count are also not used anymore, so we can remove them. And use state is not used anymore. We can remove this as well. And save. And now let's make sure that we saved all of our other files. So we'll open index.html, and we'll save it. And let's open the starting code index.html, and we'll save this file. And now let's take a look at our website. We'll open the browser, and we can close GitHub for now, and we'll open the e-commerce project. And you'll see that we have the HTML and the text for the e-commerce project home page. Now, obviously, this doesn't look very good, so let's move over the CSS next. To move the CSS into our React project, in first, Git will tell us that all of these files are going to review a tool repository. Git installed. Once we have everything installed, we can run this project using the command npm run dev. And now we can open this project using this URL in the browser. So we'll select this URL and copy, and in the browser, we're going to create a new tab, and then here we'll paste. And now we have a new React project. Before we start updating the code, we're actually going to review a tool called Git. Git helps us track changes in our code, and it's useful in bigger projects because we're going to be making lots of changes, and it's easy to forget what we changed. So Git will help us track our changes. We're going to go to our code, and we're going to open the Git section here so we can remove them for the e-commerce project home page. Now, obviously, this doesn't look very good, so let's move over the CSS next. To move the CSS into our React project, we're going to go back to our code, and we're going to open the starting code index.html. And here we're going to scroll up, and we load 3 CSS files. So we're going to move these 3 files into our React project. We'll start with general.css. If we open styles/shared, which is here, and shared, and open general.css, then this file contains CSS for the overall website. CSS for the overall website goes into the index.css file in React. So we'll click general.css, and we'll press Ctrl A on Windows or Command A on Mac to select all of this code, and we'll copy, and inside index.css in the e-commerce project, we're going to remove all of this default code and paste and save. And now if we go back to the starting code, we've moved over general.css, and we can delete this file. And now we'll go back to the starting code index.html. And we can remove this line. And we'll move header.css and index.css into our React project. So both of these style the home page. So we'll just move these files beside our home page component. First, we'll go into styles, shared, and header.css, and we're going to drag this file into our pages folder. So we keep our CSS beside the component that it styles. And we'll scroll down and find styles/pages, and we'll move index.css beside the home page as well. So header.css styles the header at the top of the page, and index.css styles the main part of the home page. Now, a best practice is to use the same name as the component here. So we'll right-click index.css, and we'll rename it capital H home, capital P page. Next, to load these styles, we need to import them. We'll open homepage.jsx, and at the top, we're going to import a string, and we'll import the file ./header.css. And we'll also import a string ./homepage.css and save. And now, if we go back to the starting code, index.html, we moved all of the HTML and CSS into our project. So now we can delete this file. Finally, /homepage.css and save. And now, if we go back to the starting code, index.html, we moved all of the HTML and CSS into our project. So now we can delete this file. Finally, we'll open app.css, and these styles were for the default React website. So we don't need these anymore. So we can select all of the CSS and just remove it and save. So finally, we'll open app.css, and these styles were for the default React website. So we don't need these anymore. So we can select all of the CSS and just remove it and save. So make sure that we saved all of our files. And now we're going to view the website. And now it's looking really good. We have the structure and the styling that we need. The only thing that's missing are the images. So let's move the images next. To move the images, we'll go back to VS Code, and we'll go to the starting code and find the images folder. So this contains all the images that we need. So we're going to move this into the React project. Now, usually we put images in the assets folder, and then we import the images. However, to save time, we're going to move this folder into the public folder. So we're going to move it up here and into the public folder. The reason we move it into the public folder is because if we look at homepage.jsx and we look at an image, notice the source attribute starts with images/. When using Vite, if we start with a folder name like this and into the public folder,
How is that in usage? How is that in use? Hey, Grizz, how you doing, man? We're learning some stuff right now. I'm trying to get out of game development, so I am teaching myself web development to get out. And so we're learning how to build a web page using an application structure called React. Yeah, that's the hope, man. Though I don't know what's using this.
The reason we move it into the public folder is because if we look at
How you doing, man?
homepage.jsx and we look at an image, notice the source attribute starts with images slash. When using Vite, if we start with a folder name like this, Vite will look for this inside the public folder. So it finds it here. So by moving our images into the public folder, we don't have to change any of this code, and it just saves time in the video. We can move these images into the source/assets folder and import them later as an exercise. So now let's open our website, and all of the images are loaded. So that's how we move an HTML website into a React website. We just move over the HTML, CSS, and images one by one. Let's go back to VS Code, and we'll save our changes into Git. We'll open the Git section, and here we moved all the HTML.
Just got home from work. Nice, man. How long was your shift? Good to be happy to be done. Nice. That's not too bad. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's alright, man. I'm working now.
HTML, CSS, and images for the homepage. We're going to type a message.
Work is a weird concept to me because technically this is work. And we're using it to expand our skill set even on my day off. I just never have time to sleep or never have time to like stop thinking.
Message at the top. Move the home page into React and press commit.
Oh, right on. Yeah, we're just learning from
Next,
some other stuff.
we're gonna move the.
We're on lesson 6. I started this last weekend.
The checkout page to the React setup.
We're basically building this website, which for the most part we haven't done too much yet. It's just stuff that someone else has put together. But getting a starting project up and running is taking a while. But this is a lot of what coding is. I'm at 40k views.
We'll go to our browser, and we're going to open the final project at supersimple.dev, and we're going to click the cart icon in the top right. This will open the checkout page where we can see our cart and we can place an order. So notice that this is a separate page from the home page, and this page is also on a different URL, /checkout. So how do we create multiple pages in React? To do that, we're going to learn a feature called routing. Routing lets us create multiple pages in React.
Yeah, that's 100% true, dude.
Let's go back to our code.
Gotta crawl before you
And
can
we'll
run.
open our files here. And we're going to scroll down first to the starting code folder. So normally, to create multiple pages, we need to create multiple HTML files, like here. Each page has its own HTML file. like the checkout page and the orders page. However, inside these files, notice that there's a lot of repeated code. So each file has the doc type, it has some meta and link elements, and in the orders.html, it has the same meta and link elements. So this is not great because if we want to change something on one page, we have to change all of the pages. On the other hand, routing lets us create multiple pages using one HTML file, and this lets us reuse our HTML code. To use routing, we're going to install an npm package called React Router. So let's reopen our terminal. You can click here and drag up, or press Ctrl J on Windows or Command J on Mac to open this terminal. Now we currently have the Vite server running, so we'll press Ctrl C on Windows and Mac to stop the Vite server. And to install React Router, we're going to run the command npm install react-router, and we'll also type @ So for this video, we'll use a specific version of React Router, just to make sure that it works with the video. So click this link in the description, go to lesson 6, and here you'll find the version of React Router that we'll use, and you'll also find the full command. So again, you should always use the version that you see on your page. So select the version on your page and copy it, and then in our command line, we're going to paste that version and press enter to install. So now, how do we use React Router? Like most packages, React Router has a documentation page that tells you how to use it. You can find the documentation in the description, but for the video, I'm going to show you the parts of the documentation that we need. According to the documentation, to use React Router, we need to load it when we render the app component. So in our project, we're going to scroll up and open main.jsx. And I'll close these other files so we can see more of the code. So in this file, we set up React. We render our app component on the page. According to the documentation, we need to wrap this in a component called browser router. So at the top, first we're going to import curly brackets, the browser router from a string, and we'll import it from the package react-router. As a review, if we just start with a name like this without /, this means it's going to load it from node modules from the React Router package. And now, around the app, we're going to create less than browser router greater than, and we're going to put the app inside here. So we'll cut this and paste it in here. Let's save. Next, we need to do a bit more setup. According to the documentation, inside our app component, we need to add a component called routes. So let's open app.jsx, and at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, the component routes from a string, and we'll import this from the package react-router. And inside this component, we're going to insert the routes component using less than routes greater than. So the routes component tells React all the pages that are in our website. So to add a page to our website, we're going to use another component called route. A route is basically a page. So first we need to import that. At the top, we're already importing from React Router. So we're going to add a comma and import the route component. So inside routes, we're going to add less than route greater than. So again, a route basically adds a page to our website. And we're going to give this route 2 props. The first prop is called path equals double quotes. This tells React the URL path of this page. The URL path is the last part of the URL, like /checkout or /orders. So first, let's add the home page. For the home page, the URL path is empty. To set the URL path as empty, we're going to set it to /. And then we're going to give route a second prop called element equals curly brackets. So this tells React which element or component to display when we go to this URL path. For the home page, we want to display this home page component. So let's select it and cut. And inside here, we're going to paste. So this tells React that when we go to the URL path / or empty, it's going to display our home page. So let's try it out. We'll save this file, and then inside the terminal, we're going to start the Vite server using npm run dev. And we'll visit this URL. I already have it open, so I'll open my browser. And now, if the URL path ends with / or empty, it's going to display the home page. Next, let's use React Router to add a checkout page. We'll go back to our code. And to add another page to our website, we're going to use the route component again. So we'll create <, route greater than, and we'll give it 2 props. The path equals double quotes. And for the checkout page, we'll set the URL path to checkout. This means this page will be displayed when we go to /checkout. And we'll give it another prop, element equals curly brackets. And right now, we didn't create a component for the checkout page yet. So let's just create a div here just to make sure that this is working. So we'll create a div element, and inside, let's type test checkout page and save. So now, if we go to our project, and in the URL path, we're going to go to /checkout and press enter. It displays the div with the text that we created. So as you can see, routing is actually pretty simple. We just tell React which pages we want in our website, and then what to display for each page. Now let's learn some more details about routing. If we look at our code, we now have multiple pages in our website, and all of these pages use one HTML file, which is index.html. So this HTML is shared between all of our pages, and this reduces repetition. By the way, this is called a single page application, or an SPA. This means we only have one HTML file, and instead we use React to create multiple pages. Next, we'll use some shortcuts with React Router. The first shortcut is, instead of path equals /, React Router has a prop for this called index. So this does the same thing as path equals /. The second shortcut is currently we don't have anything inside these route components, so we can use the self-closing element shortcut. We'll remove the closing tag, and at the end here, we'll add a space and a slash. And same thing here. We'll remove the closing tag and add a space and slash, and save. And now we'll save these changes into Git. We'll open the Git section, and here it tells us we installed React Router, and in app.jsx, we added some routes or some pages to our website. In main.jsx, we loaded the React Router. So let's create a message to describe these changes. Create multiple pages using React-Router and commit. Now let's move the checkout page into our app. We'll go back to our files, and first we'll open app.jsx. And instead of displaying a div when we go to /checkout, let's remove it. And let's create a component for the checkout page, just like the home page. In the pages folder, we'll click this and we'll create a new file. And we'll name this capital C checkout, capital P page.jsx. And inside here, we'll create a new component using function, checkout, page, brackets, and curly brackets. And we'll return brackets, and we'll move the HTML for the checkout page in here. So we'll go to the starting code folder, and we'll open checkout.html. So this is the HTML file for the checkout page. We're going to scroll down to the body element first, and we're going to move over this HTML. So we'll click here to collapse this code, and click here to collapse this code as well. And we'll select all this HTML, and we'll cut, and then inside checkout page, inside the return, we're going to paste. And let's scroll up, and we'll fix these errors. So first, if we collapse these two elements, remember we're returning two elements from this component, which causes an error. To fix this, we'll wrap this in a fragment. And we'll fix the indenting. Now you can fix it manually like we did before, but you can also use this shortcut. We can press Ctrl-Shift-P on Windows or Command-Shift-P on Mac. And this will open up a list of commands that we can use in VS Code. So we're going to search for the command format document. And we can click it or press enter. And it will automatically format the code in this document and fix the indenting. Next, if we expand these elements, remember in React, we have to use class name instead of class. To replace these, we'll press Ctrl F or Command F to find code, and we'll find the code class equals, and click this arrow, and we're going to replace it with class name equals, and click replace all. And finally, the last ESLint error here is this component is not used in this file. So we need to export it and save. And now let's use this component in our route. We'll open app.jsx, and at the top, we'll import the page using import curly brackets, the checkout page from a string, and we'll import ./pages/checkout page. And we'll use it inside this route using less than checkout page / greater than, and save. And now let's check our website. And if we go to the path /checkout, you can see we have the HTML for the checkout page. Now let's add the rest of the code for the checkout page. We'll go back to VS Code, and we're going to go to the starting code and open checkout.html. And we're going to move this over one by one. So first, what do we do for this title? Right now, all of our pages are sharing one HTML file here. So all of the pages have the same title, e-commerce project. However, we want each page to have a different title. So how do we do that? Well, in React, it's actually pretty simple. We just have to take this title and move it into our page component. So we'll select this and cut, and then we'll scroll up and open checkoutpage.jsx. And if we want this page to have a different title, all we have to do is to paste the title at the top and save. So if we look at our website, now the checkout page has the title checkout in the tabs. So we'll go back to our code, and we're also going to set the title in the home page. So we'll open the home page, and in the home page, let's create a title, and we're going to set the title to e-commerce project and save. And now we can scroll down to the index.html, and we can remove this title because we're going to set it using React and save. And now let's move the rest of the HTML in the checkout page. If we scroll down here, these meta and link elements have already been moved to index.html. So this is being shared across all of our pages. So we actually don't need to move this over anymore because it's shared. So we can remove all of this code. And finally, we're going to move over the CSS for this page. For general.css, and in the home page, let's create a title, and we're going to set the title to e-commerce project and
Hey,
save.
Funkin. Right now I'm
And
using
now we can scroll down
IdeaJ.
to the
IntelliJ, sorry.
index.html,
IntelliJ
and we
Idea.
can remove this title because we're going to set it using React.
I use
and
JetBrains
save.
Writer for an IDE.
And now let's move the rest of the HTML in the checkout page. If we scroll down here, these meta and link elements have already
How you doing,
been
Funk?
moved to index.html. So this is being shared across all of our pages. So we actually don't need to move this over anymore because it's shared. So we can remove all of this code.
You're doing? Nice. Same.
And finally, we're going to move over the CSS for this page and save. And now we can scroll down to the index.html, and we can remove this title because we're going to set it using React and save. And now let's move the rest of the HTML in the checkout page. If we scroll down here, these meta and link elements have already been moved to index.html. So this is being shared across all of our pages. So we actually don't need to move this over anymore because it's shared. So we can remove all of this code.
Yeah, right now we're learning some new stuff. I've never used React before, and so I've been applying for new jobs, so I'm trying to learn React and stuff. So we're doing some RuneScaping and coding. Fun times, fun times.
And finally, we're going to move over the CSS for this page. For general.css, remember that we already copied these styles into index.css, so we don't need to move this anymore. And now we'll just move checkout_header.css and checkout.css into our React project. So we'll go to styles/pages/checkout, and we'll move checkout_header.css into the React project, into here, and scroll down. And we'll also move checkout.css into our React project beside the component. And now that we moved everything over, we can delete the checkout.html file. So we can delete this file. Finally, let's scroll up, and we're going to rename the CSS file to match the component name. So we'll right-click and rename checkout page.css. And now we'll load these two CSS files using import. So in checkout page.jsx at the top, we'll import a string, and we'll import the CSS file ./checkout-header.css. And we'll also
Is that
import
code for fun only if needed? Yeah, I don't code for fun.
./checkout page.css and save. We'll go to our
I'm not doing
website.
this for fun. I'm doing this to
And now everything looks really good. So we finished moving
to
all the
potentially get a
HTML and
new job.
CSS for the checker.css.
I build video games for a living,
And we'll also import
I'm doing my best to try to get out of video games.
page.css and save. We'll go to our website. And now everything looks really good. So we finished moving all the HTML and CSS for
What's
the
wrong
checkout
with video
page.
games? It's just a really it's a really stressful job to be a part of. And everything's always changing. It's very out of the box, and it's just not what clicks with my brain nowadays. So I'm trying to do my best to get into web development. We're trying to.
Into our React project.
Yeah, volatile is a
Let's
good
go
word.
back to our code.
Volatile, it's it doesn't pay as well. Big thing is pay right now. I just don't make enough money. So we're trying to do this to get a yeah, layoffs are what stress me out. Every time I hear the word layoff, it leaves a bad thing in my mouth. Video games are just too volatile.
And we'll save these changes into Git. We'll open the Git section. And in app.jsx, we use the checkout page component for /checkout. And then we moved over the CSS files. And in here, we moved over the HTML code, as well as the title. Let's type a message to describe these changes. Move checkout page into React and commit.
So yeah, I'm teaching myself React to try
Before
to
we
get
continue
a better
moving
job.
pages, there's an issue that we need to fix. If we open the website and click the top left icon, normally this should take us to the home page, but now it's blank. So why is this not working? Notice in the URL, the path is /index.html. Before, this website was split up into multiple HTML files, and index.html
System admin?
created the
Nice.
homepage.
A lonely system
But
admin.
now we're using routing, so we set the URL paths ourselves. In
It's
our
okay,
project,
dude.
we set the path / to be the homepage, and we set the path /checkout to be the checkout page. So we need to go into our code and update all of the links to go
DevOps?
to
I
the
wish I was in
correct
DevOps.
URL path.
I
We'll
used
go
to be
back
in
to
Dev
VS Code.
Relations.
And to
which
update
was much
all of our
nicer.
links,
But
we're going to
I
go to the search section of VS
had a mental collapse where I quit my job and stuff and put myself in a really bad situation.
Code. We can press Control Shift F on Windows or Command Shift F on Mac.
Yeah, on the side. Yeah,
And
we're
here we can search.
Yeah, we've got RuneScape running on the side. I play RuneScape and Team Fortress 2 a lot. I just do a lot of wood cutting.
Inside all of our files. First, let's search for the code index.html. This will give us a list of Control-Shift-F on Windows, and we set the path /checkout to be the checkout page. So we need to go into our code and update all of the links to go to the correct URL path. We'll go back to VS Code, and to update all of our links, we're going to go to the search section of VS Code. We can press Control-Shift-F on Windows or Command-Shift-F on Mac. And here, we can search inside all of our files. First, let's search for the code index.html. This will give us a list of A elements or link elements. And href means where these links should go. So now, instead of index.html, these links should go to /. To replace index.html in all these places, we can click this arrow on the left to open the replace menu, and we'll replace this with /. And then click here to replace all.
Can I do that? I was hoping to have a find and replace. But I don't see an option to. Not for doing it this way, at least. It's weird that they don't have that.
And confirm. And let's replace the links for the other pages as well. So up here, we'll also search for checkout.html. And in this search result, we have a link element with the href checkout.html. And in our router, we set the URL path for the checkout page to /checkout. So we'll replace all of these with checkout and replace all. And we'll do the same thing for the orders page, which is
Can't believe they don't have a find and replace
orders.html.
all.
And here we'll change it to /orders and replace. And finally, we also have a tracking page. So here we're going to and confirm. And let's replace the links for the other pages as well. So up here, we'll also search for checkout.html. And in this search result, we have a link.
Yeah,
element
this is what it
with the
is.
href
Control Shift F
checkout.html.
is this window.
And in our router, we set the URL path for
But
the
it doesn't give
checkout
me an
page
option
to
change them
/checkout.
all.
So we'll replace all of these with /checkout and replace all. And we'll do the same thing for the orders page, which is
Thank you for the lookup, though.
orders.html. And here we'll change it to /orders and replace. And finally, we also have a tracking page. So here we're going to search for tracking.html and replace it with /tracking and replace all. And now all of our links should work correctly because they match our router.
Yeah, that's really irritating.
If we open the website and at the top, we change the URL path to /checkout,
Unless I'm missing something.
it opens the checkout
Hey,
page.
what's up, Daniel?
If we click the top
Control
left
Shift R.
icon, this should now go
Oh.
to the URL path / or
You're
empty,
amazing. Thank you.
and it will open the home page. So let's save this into Git.
Hey, Daniel, how are you
And
doing,
finally,
man?
we also have a tracking page. So here,
DevOps and service,
we're going to
100%,
search
dude.
for tracking.
Thank you very much for that.
And replace it with /tracking and replace all. And now all of our links should work correctly because they match our router. If we open the website and at the top, we change the URL path
I'm
to
doing all right, man. We're doing
/checkout.
some learning today.
It opens
I've been trying to find a new job, so I'm teaching myself HTML and CSS and using it in React. So we're learning about React today. I'm kind of getting up to speed. Price equals client, 100%, dude.
the checkout page. If we click the top left
So
icon,
in the meantime, we're doing some wood cutting. We're just kind of chilling. How's things with you, dude? We are at 94 wood cutting and 130k from 95. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Don't know Mainscape, but wait, what's Mainscape? What's a porter? I've only looked at the in-depth bits of DayZ and that's it. I gotcha. Yeah, I build video games in real life. I've built this little overlay that's below me. Like the chat system and all that stuff. I built it myself. Oh, I see. I don't know what a porter is though. I'm just free to play in it. Yeah, where I like have commands and do song requests and can change set your text color and all that stuff. I built the overlay myself. It's pretty cool. We just got it working again. So we're messing around with it. And yeah, we're learning some programming stuff today. But I'm not familiar with porters. What's a porter, Funk? Is that like woodcutting experience or something?
Icon. This should now go to the URL path / or empty, and it will open the home page. So let's save this into Git. We'll open the Git section.
There we go.
And we just updated all the links in these files.
Oh, I see. I've never used porters. Oh, like Portal. Yeah, I've never used a porter, but I think that's probably members only. I'm just free to play. Doing overlays? I could, but I just don't have the funds to try to do that. I wish. I built a couple. Like here's I built 2 so far. I built this one and I built this one. Where this one has basically, yeah. This one has like text to speech, it has song requests. It could change my lights in the background. LinkedIn is your arch enemy? Yeah, same here, dude. But this one was my own overlay too. Programmed everything for it too. Yeah, it is pretty soulless, dude. Trust me, man, I've been going through it all day because I have to do fucking job requests and stuff. But it's got like song requests. You could change the lights in my room. It's hooked up. It was hooked up to my lights and stuff. So it'd like actually change. Oh, sorry, my RuneScape's kind of in the way.
Let's try asking something next.
It changed the lights in my room and stuff. And then it had like ChatGPT and stuff. First customer? I don't know if I could do it, man. I wish. I don't know how I put together either of these. Speaking of, we could speaking of, we can turn on some lo-fi. What's your guys' favorite music? Do you have a favorite song? Or anything? Do a free song request just because I'm showing this off. It's actually hooked up to Spotify where if I do !SR, like it'll queue up a song. And then we can like skip to it. Get out of bed at all. Morning rain clouds in my window. It's all like automated and stuff. It's pretty cool. Picture on my wall. It reminds me. But anyways, we're doing programming stuff today. Anyways, where were we before I get sidetracked here?
To match the route.
Oh, sure. So my Discord is out of date. I don't have Smooth Crew anymore. It's down below. Or you can just add me on Discord, either one. But you'll have to use that one. I don't have the Smooth Crew linked anymore. It's been a while since I updated this thing. It's like 9 months old since I last did any modifications to it. But it's even hooked up for like sound alerts. So if someone does like, First blood, it actually is like hooked up to like sound alerts and stuff. Okay, right on, man. Yeah, you can ping me about it. I don't know if I'll be able to build a stream overlay for you. We can try, but yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to do it because every single one of them is custom, and it's surprisingly it's really difficult to build a stream overlay. Go figure. And I like this one, the one that I have up here, it took me 1.5 years to build. The other one I had took me a couple weeks, but it was because I reused a lot of code. But it's quite difficult to put together. So I don't know if I would be able to do a stream overlay for you. There's a lot of stuff that's involved in it. Trust me. Oh, okay, right on. Yeah, I can help you if you just want advice on stuff. Started OSRS PK and now it's a Chmod developer. Nice. I don't know who that is though. But that's kind of badass, starting as a PKer and ending up as a Jax mod. That's cool. Yeah, I used to work for a different game called Adventure Quest 3D, which I found out they won't rehire me, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. You want Deadman mode? Nice. Is that Iron Man but hard mode? The hardcore Iron Man? Anyways, we're getting off track here. I gotta finish off this this tutorial because we're almost at the end of it. Oh, leagues? Gotcha. I think I've heard of that, but I never did anything with it. Oh, we gotta open these. A mascot signal. Oh, that's quite a bit. $95. 95 XP. They made Dragon Fable? Yeah. I used to work on Adventure Quest 3D. RX Entertainment, yeah, they made Dragon Fable.
router. Let's type the message. Update
Oh.
links to match the router and commit. Next, let's move the orders page into our React project. Feel free to pause the video if you want to try it yourself first. So we'll go back to our files, and first let's create a component for the orders page. Inside the pages folder, we'll create a new file and we'll name it orders page.jsx and press enter. And inside here, we'll create a component function orders page brackets and curly brackets, and we'll return brackets and we'll move over the HTML. So we'll go back to the starting code folder and open orders.html. We'll start with the body, so we'll scroll down and we can collapse these two elements, and we'll select the HTML and cut, and inside the orders page, inside the return, we'll paste. We'll scroll up and collapse these elements, and we're going to wrap these in a fragment, less than greater than, and remove this, and at the end, less than / greater than. And to fix the indenting, we can use the shortcut Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P and search for the command format document and press enter. Again, we
Okay, I
need to
think we got
rename
that.
class to class name. So we'll press Control F or Command F to find code. We'll search for class equals, click here, and replace it with class name, and replace all. And finally, at the top, we'll export this component. Let's save this file. Let's go back to orders.html, scroll up, and we'll move over this code. So for the title, we're going to move it into the component. We'll select it, cut, and at the top, in orders page, we're going to paste it at the top.
Yeah, for me, I used to play a lot of old
Let's go
school
back to
RuneScape, but I swapped over to
orders.html.
RuneScape 3 because I lost my account, which kind of
And
sucks.
these meta and link elements are already inside index.html.
So I've been
so we can
playing
remove this.
since May-ish,
And finally, we'll move the
and
CSS
we've just been
files over.
doing woodcutting all
So
day.
general.css was already moved into index.css.
Raymond for 99 woodcutting.
We already moved over header.css up here. So we just need to move the orders.css. So inside starting code, we'll go into styles/pages, and we'll move this orders.css file. So we'll move it up here beside the orders page component. And now we moved over everything inside orders.html. So we can scroll down and delete this file. Next, we should rename orders.css to match the component name. So we'll right click and rename orders page.css. And finally, we'll load the CSS files. So in orders page.jsx, at the top, we're going to import a string. And remember, this requires the header and the orders page CSS. So first we'll import ./header.css, and we'll also import ./orders page.css and save. And now we moved over all the HTML and CSS for the orders page. So now let's create a route for this page. we'll go to app.jsx. And first at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, the orders page from a string, and we'll locate ./pages/orders page. And then down here, we're going to add another route. So at the end, we'll add less than route greater than, and we can remove this and use the self-closing element shortcut. And we'll give it two props. We'll set the path
Nice.
equals double quotes, and we'll put the orders page on the path /orders. And we'll give it an element to display equals curly brackets. And for the orders page, we'll display the element less than orders page / greater than, and save.
Okay, one more piece.
And now let's view the website. We'll open the website, and on the homepage, we're going to click this orders link to go to /orders, and it displays the orders page. So that looks pretty good. And now we finished moving the orders page into React. So let's go back to VS Code, and in the starting code, there's one more page to move over, which is the tracking page, but I'll leave this as an exercise. So now let's save these changes into Git. Open.
Okay, let's duplicate this then. Shift F6 is rename. Tracking. Okay, cool.
Open the Git section. In app.jsx, we added a new route for the orders page, and we moved over the CSS and the HTML. So we'll type the message, move orders page to React, and commit. Next, we're going to separate our page into smaller components. For example, if we look at our website, notice that on the orders page, there's this header at the top. And if we click the top left and go to the home page, we have the same header at the top of the page. So it's a good idea to separate the header into a component so we can reuse it between these pages. We'll go back to VS Code and we'll open our files, and we're going to open homepage.jsx. And at the top here, we have the HTML for the header. If we collapse it, this is all the HTML for the header. Let's separate this into a shared component. Now, because this component is shared between multiple pages, we usually put shared components in a folder called components. So inside our source folder, we're going to click it and create a new folder, and we'll call it components. So the components folder is for shared components, and the pages folder is for components that are specific to a page. Inside the components folder, we'll create a new file, and let's name it header.jsx. And in here, we'll create a component for the header using function header, brackets and curly brackets, and we'll return brackets, and we'll move over the HTML. So we'll open homepage.jsx, and we're going to select the HTML for the header and cut. Inside header.jsx, inside here, we're going to paste. And we'll fix the indenting by pressing Ctrl-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P and search for Format Document and press Fix the indenting by move over the HTML. So we'll open homepage.jsx, and we're going to select the HTML for the header and cut. Inside header.jsx, inside here, we're going to paste. And we'll fix the indenting by pressing Ctrl-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P and search for Format Document and press Enter. And we'll scroll to the top. And lastly, we're going to export this component to remove this error. Next, we should also move over the CSS for the header. Now, luckily, the CSS for the header has already been separated into header.css. So we can just move this over to beside the component. So we want to keep the CSS close to the component so it's easy to find. So at the top of this, we can import the CSS using import a string, and we'll import ./header.css and save. So now that we created this header component, we can reuse it in the homepage and the orders page. We'll open homepage.jsx, and at the top, first, we don't need to import the header anymore. It's already done by this component, so we can remove it. And let's import the component using import curly brackets, the header from a string, and now we need to locate this file. So currently we're inside the pages folder. So we need to get out of this folder using .. and then go into the components folder, components/header. And now we'll use this component in the HTML. So down here, we'll insert less than header slash greater than, and save. So now this HTML is a bit easier to work with because we split it up into smaller pieces. Let's do the same thing with the orders page. We'll open the orders page JSX, and at the top, we don't need to import header.css, and instead we'll import curly brackets, the header component from a string, and we'll locate /components/header. And down here, instead of this HTML, we can remove this and just use the component less than header slash greater than. And this helps us reuse and save a lot of code. Let's save and then view the website. The header looks good in the home page, and if we click here to go to the orders page, the header also looks good in the orders page. So we're able to reuse the header component. Next, there's a small issue with the header. When we click a link, like this link in the top left, it actually reloads the page when we go to another page. So by default, link elements or A elements reload the page. Now this made sense before when our website had multiple HTML files. To go from one file to another file, we have to reload the page. However, now that we're using routing and a single page application, we don't have to reload every time. We can just use JavaScript to switch between pages. To do this, React Router provides a component called link. So we'll go back to our code and we'll open the header component. And at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, the link component from the package React-Router. So the link component lets us go to another page without reloading. To use it, we just have to replace our link elements or A elements with this link component. So here, let's replace this with link and at the end /link. And also, instead of the href attribute, the link component uses a prop called to. So this will link to this page. Let's scroll down. And in the header, we have two other links, the orders link and the cart link. So we'll switch both of these as well. So here, we'll switch it to link and /link, and we'll switch the href to 2. And finally, switch this to link and /link, and switch href to 2, and save. And now let's open our website to try it out. If we click this link to go to the orders page, you'll notice it's a little bit faster because now it's using JavaScript to essentially display a different page without reloading. So when using React Router, we should use the link component instead of the A element, because the link component lets us go to another page without reloading. Now let's save these changes into Git. We'll go to the Git section, and here we split up the header into a separate component. And then inside the header, we switch to using the link component to switch between pages. Let's type the message, split header into a component, and use link. and commit. In the next lesson, we'll add a backend to this project and make it interactive. So we'll be able to display a list of products and add products to a cart and create an order. And that's the end of this lesson. In this lesson, we started the e-commerce project using React and Vite. We reviewed Git, which helps us track changes in our code. This lesson, you can find it in the description.
Alright, dudes. I think I'm gonna hop off. We've been sitting at 2 hours. Yeah, I'm gonna go take a nap. I'll catch y'all later, dudes.